She grew up in the quiet hills of Wales, a girl with big dreams and even bigger fire burning inside her. When the world around her felt too small, she chose to leap, leaving everything she knew behind, chasing a future she could barely imagine.
I studied dance, I did a degree in it, decided to move to London. I just had this dream to be in the West End and I wanted to pursue that. So I went home and I told my parents that I was moving to London and they were like, what? They were just obviously so scared because I was so young.
London was a new world, bright, brutal, unforgiving. The dream of becoming a dancer came with rejection, heartbreak and more battles than she could count. But every no only sharpened her hunger. Every door that slammed taught her how to build her own.
To grow your Instagram page, it was very much how many people could like it, how many people could comment on it.
Yeah.
I was like, right, I'm going to build my own page. So I did. So I went from like 1,000 followers to 9k followers quite quickly.
Wow.
I was grafting hard.
She became a trainer, a coach, a builder of bodies and of spirits. She was wired differently. She was wired for more.
And at the time I was looking to find the niche that I wanted to niche down with. And they said, why don't you coach women with ADHD? It kind of then enabled me to go on my self-development journey, which then enabled me to reframe my mindset around it.
With her ADHD diagnosis came clarity and a new mission to help ambitious, neurodivergent women turn their unique minds into their ultimate competitive advantage.
And it was almost like this light bulb moment because your business is a reflection of your healing journey.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast. I'm Cameron Neale, and this isn't just a story about success. It's a story about resilience, revolution, and finally coming home to yourself. Amie Barlow, welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, you're my first guest for the in-person setup, which is really cool.
Privileged.
Yeah. Had to worry about being too perfectionist here. Just had to get it going. As long as the audio was all right, the lighting's all right, which is all like out of my territory here. But yeah, this is pretty cool.
I think that's the best thing as well, though, because I think sometimes you can wait until everything's like pristine to get started. And as we know with entrepreneurship, you just got to get scrappy, get involved, and then it'll come later.
Exactly. Just get a little bit better each time and then just keep retesting and then, yeah, we'll get better every time. Surely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, founder of ADHD Empire, businesswoman, fitness coach, content creator / influencer. Any other hats I'm missing or labels?
Ex-professional dancer, I guess.
Yep.
I think that's my cap for now, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. You've got a very exciting like weekly life. You know, so much going on, and
Yeah, varied.
Lots of different topics we can talk about today. But I guess we could just start, from the beginning. Who are you? I guess your background. We'll just go over what feels like the beginning of Amie in a way.
Okay.
Maybe not from birth, but
Yeah, that'd be a long old story. I can't actually remember that far back, but yeah. No, thank you, Cam. Going off the back of like my journey in probably my 20s, I would say. So obviously you guys have introduced me, I'm Amie. And I was originally a performer. So I studied dance when I was, pretty much when I was a kid. Now I'm not studying it anymore, but I still do dance. And I did a degree in it. I studied at a university called Plymouth, which is down south in the UK. And then I decided to move to London at, how old was I, like 19, 20? And I had no clue how it was going to go. I just had this dream to be in the West End and I wanted to pursue that. So I kept going up to a place called Pineapple Dance Studios, which is quite well known. And from Wales, because I'm from Wales originally, I would go up on the bus at 5 a.m. in the morning, go and do an audition for like a show, if they were casting, and then I would come back. And then I met somebody at one of the classes I was at. She said, oh, we've got a room spare in our house. There's a group of us, we're all performers. So I went home and I told my parents that I was moving to London, and they were like, what? I don't believe you. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. Not you shouldn't be doing that, but they were just obviously so scared because I was so young. But I did it. I was working in a pub as well at the time, and that was in Stratford, so like East London. So I was like hustling. I was working at the pub. I was doing the auditions, trying to make it all work, and it was intense. And then I did get like a few lucky breaks in the West End, and I was doing that. But I was just so, I would say, like, inexperienced and so underconfident. It's so funny with the performance industry because you get told that by 25 your career's over, but I feel like you don't really come into your own skin and like really truly feel confident in yourself until you are in your 30s or late 20s, early
Yep.
30s. So yeah, so I did struggle to kind of, progress because I didn't feel confident enough to do so. And then I was hating the fact that I was working in the pub whilst I was like living my dream. And that kind of light bulb moment for me was when I thought, well, I've always had a passion for fitness. I've always been, because I actually started doing CrossFit back in Wales
Yep.
when I was 16 years of age.
Wow.
So this is like before this whole like facade of CrossFit now.
Yeah, the huge trend.
Yeah, like I was doing it in a little tin can in the valleys. Like we all just went there, just ran around, just, did all CrossFit. There was nothing about aesthetics and how you look. So I just knew that I always had a passion for fitness and I was always really athletic. So I thought, well, why not see if I can get a job doing that whilst I'm doing the performing? Because at least that's more like aligned. But I didn't have my PT qualification at the time, and some of the girls that I was living with, some of them did like front of house jobs and gyms, so I thought perfect. So I started to like apply for quite a few places, and I got a job in a studio called Surge Fitness, and it was basically have you ever heard of EMS
No.
training?
How's that?
So it stands for electrical muscular stimulation.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's kind of like a TENS machine that you put on you.
Yeah, I did that. We had a day at uni, and yeah, we got to test them out. That was I think they called it a different name back home, but yeah, that was so cool. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was really funny because people are like, oh, when did you become a PT? And I'm like, well, I actually learned how to train people with that machine before I became
No
a PT.
way. Okay.
Because I started front of house in this like boutique studio run by this very wealthy man from Bavaria called Constantine. So funny, you couldn't make it up. And there was literally like 5 or 6 of us in this like very boutique studio in Hammersmith. So I was working there, and I wasn't qualified at the time to like obviously train people, but they were struggling to like, uphold the amount of clients that they had. So I started training clients and started to build those relationships with them. And then on the sly, I was training some of those clients outside of the EMS studio. So I was like, you need more than this. And it was quite a wealthy clientele. So I built a lot of connections through that fitness studio. I was training people like the Princess of Luxembourg. Like it was It was a crazy time. Like so crazy. And yeah, so on the side of all of that, I guess like the big thing is the social media. So I started off when I first moved to London, I had probably like 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
And I also had this passion to want to help women through fitness through my Instagram page. But it wasn't really a thing that people were doing at the time, because we're talking, like 9 years ago?
Yep.
But I somehow found a friend of a friend was doing the same thing, and we ended up kind of connecting. And he said, oh, well, I've actually got a group of people that we're all in like this engagement group, and we all, post in there when we put something up, and then everybody comments and supports it as well.
Yep.
So we were all kind of in that group, and I was using that to also build my following. And then off the back of that, I found more women in the fitness industry that were also, not even the fitness industry, more girls that were just doing the fitness thing on Instagram as well. And then I built my own engagement group as well to help those women. And because at the time, Instagram was completely different.
So different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, it's more just photos, still has the aesthetic vibe to it, but just like, you're not using it as a way to grow your brand per se. It's just people who are creating, like you don't think of them as influencers in a way. They're just people who create, but it's completely separate from people who consume.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot more people in between now. Not everyone, but
no, I get it. Yeah. Now there is a more common theme with people just doing the same thing on there, whereas at the time it was very different. And to grow your Instagram page, it was very much how many people could like it, how many people could comment on it.
Yeah.
And Instagram would favor that. Now it's very different. So I was like, right, I'm going to build my own page. So I did, own engagement group. So I did. And then, so I was working at the EMS studio, and then I was building this on the side. And then I went from It grew quite quickly, I would say, because it was a lot easier to grow back then. So I went from like 1,000 followers to 9K followers quite quickly.
Wow.
And I wasn't even at 10K. And
This is like before Reels as well.
and this is before Reels.
Crazy.
And a company reached out to me who did personal training qualifications.
Yeah.
And they were like, we would love to invite you to do your qualification through us. All you need to do is just post about it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like where the personal training, fitness side of things started to really grow. But I think what I really want to home in on here is that it wasn't just me one day looking at my phone and being like, there was 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
And then there's like 9K followers. Like I was grafting hard. Like I would go on content shoot days with my friends in the street. We would like get changed like in the park and behind the trees. Like it wasn't glamorous at all. And we were like promoting brands that weren't even paying us for anything, you know, or we would buy our own leggings and like tag Gymshark. And it was really just us just figuring it all out. And I remember I was very addicted to engagement, to the point where I would wake up in the morning and be straight on my phone, like engaging in other people's posts. Like it was a hard graft, and I had a lot of negativity, especially around people that didn't quite understand. They'd be like, you're addicted to Instagram, you're addicted to your phone. But it was all of that kind of led me to grow like I did. So there was a lot of graft, but then so did the PT qualification, and then alongside that, I was obviously doing the full time at the fitness EMS studio, so it was quite a lot to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And then alongside that, I also got another gig to be in a show in the West End, so I was juggling like all of this stuff at the same time, which was intense.
And once you have that gig in the West End, that has to be like your number one priority, right?
100%, yeah. So somehow I made it all work. Luckily, it was only like a short cabaret show thing, but yeah. And then I eventually, after the qualification, the company that did the qualifications actually offered for me to be a PT at their studio. And I felt like it was the right time to leave Surge, which was the other studio. And I was like, okay, this is the right time. So that was in like a studio in literally central London in Liverpool Street. And honestly, Cam, I hated it. It was horrendous.
Okay.
It was so bad. I was getting up, like 4:30, getting the central line, being there for, I don't know, 6 o'clock. It was underground, the studio.
Yep.
It was just not a fun place to work. And also the concept was kind of a strange model where you had to kind of be present for X amount of hours, so you didn't have to pay rent, the whole situation. Yep. So yeah, I really wasn't enjoying it. And it was funny because I think sometimes we're so scared to like let go of things and quit things because we don't know what's around the corner, and we do, like, scarcity kicks in.
Yeah.
But back then I was definitely more fearless, I guess. And I remember one day just waking up and thinking, I don't want to do this. I'm not very happy in this studio. And I spoke to my mum, and my mum was like, how much money have you got in your bank account? And I was like, I've got £1,000. She was like, well, how much is your rent? I said 600. She's like, okay, as long as you can cover your rent, quit the fitness studio if you're not happy.
Yep.
And I did.
Yeah.
I literally did. I had some money from the West End job, quit the fitness studio, and I decided I wanted to go all in with like full-time influencing.
Okay, nice.
So I was like, right, let's do this. And it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. I wouldn't say not that I wanted it to, just that I didn't know how to get paid work. I was working with like brands like My Protein, and I was getting a few collaborations. And then the engagement group that I was in on Instagram that I created with all these girls, I actually then created it into more of a brand, which is called the International Girl Gang, where I was sort of organising meetups for us all.
Yeah. But
still, I wasn't making enough money. And then I remember I had a friend that invited me to an F45 class. She's like, I've got this like a free class, like come join. So I went, and it completely changed my life. And I started going to a few classes there, and then I got a job there as a trainer, and that was in Ravenscourt Park in southwest London. So that was kind of like my journey into F45. And then alongside that, I was very blessed actually, because off the back of the studio I worked out with lots of wealthy people, I had picked up a few one-to-one clients through that.
Nice.
So I was training this one woman. She was wonderful. very, very wealthy, and I think I was training her like 5 or 6 times a week.
Wow.
And she was paying me like £50 an hour. So I was just going to her house. It was incredible. So I was keeping myself afloat. I feel like I've been talking so much.
No, you're doing great. This is a lot of things that's coming up, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that was kind of like my journey into the fitness stuff. And then I was still at F45, but then obviously, I think before COVID happened, literally just before, I again quit F45 fully, and I wanted to try and go for the influencer stuff again full time. So I met a woman through F45 that ran her own like marketing agency, and she was going to help me grow my profile. So I was like, do you know what? Sod it, I'm going to quit again. But then at the time as well, lockdown happened, so it kind of all worked at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the gyms were being closed anyway, so
Exactly.
you couldn't really coach.
Yeah, so that actually worked in my favour. However, the one good thing that I did have and that did work in my favour is alongside F45, because I moved around a few different studios, and through me building my Instagram, I had a company called Results with Lucy reach out to me, and the woman that runs it was the personal trainer of somebody that was on a reality TV show, and her name was Lucy. So they asked me to come and be one of their online trainers. So I would travel to Essex every couple of weeks and do online classes for them in a setting that was like a proper studio. So they were kind of the very first people to kind of like tap into the online fitness market like that.
Yeah.
So then when obviously lockdown happened, the owner of the F45 I was working at was like, Amie, like, or to everybody, was like, we need to start doing Instagram lives for people. And everybody felt really uncomfortable doing it apart from me, because I had that experience with the Results with Lucy.
Of course.
So I did still keep that up over lockdown. But yeah, I guess then the next chapter is like how I got into the online coaching stuff. But I don't know if you want to ask me a few more questions before that.
Well, I mean, like, I think that's,
Yeah.
when you get to COVID, everyone is now an online coach. Like, it was just the way everyone had to adapt in any industry. It doesn't have to be fitness related. And obviously you run your business now where it's, probably mostly online.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you mentioned, but could back step a bit. Back then you were a bit more fearless, and I think that's a good thing for young people because you have less to lose.
So true.
Yeah, and so you had all these different opportunities. Yeah, you were going, trying to work really hard for West End, while trying to pay your rent and everything like that.
Yeah.
So you just have to sometimes just go all in.
Exactly.
And I, feel the same way with coming into London.
Yeah,
I had, that, I guess, a perfect life, for most people would say on the outside, and I really enjoyed what I did. But, I knew if I didn't take this opportunity now to come here to London, bear in mind, it wasn't here for work. It wasn't like some big opportunity that I, had to do. It was more just that I wanted to do it, come to London. But it just, I knew, there's pretty much no other better time to do it, and just give up everything I had in my life to just come here, start over. So I can relate to that, going from Wales to London,
exactly.
everything
Same
like that.
with you. Did you feel like a pull to, when you did move here, even though it wasn't for like a career, did you feel like a pull to want to try and make something of yourself in London, or like what was?
100%. Like, I don't see myself being here forever.
No,
that was the case before, and the same now. But I know I want to really make the most of it. If anything, from my time here, coming up pretty much a year now in London, is that London is a very busy place to be in, and there's a lot of people who, let's just say, when the weather is overcast, which is most of the time, or raining, their mood is down. So you have to try and find the positive as much as you can with those people, trying to let them get in your head about, it's not great living here. You have to work really hard. Obviously pay your rent. Everything's expensive. Blah blah blah. Yeah, you just gotta make the most of it much as you can. And took me a few months to really feel that foundation to get there. But we had the trials, tribulations, and now I'm here. I met you, so for the audience who doesn't know,
grateful.
we met doing F45 coaching together.
Yes.
And even like since the first day I met you, we already had this bond, like connecting, which is somehow like, okay, Amie, like you have to be on my podcast.
Yeah.
And now we're here, which is awesome.
See, you just never know what's going to happen, and that's why, even though being in these places is a lot, you have to also, like, networking is key for sure.
Yep. So what was, when you went to the West End and realized like maybe this is not for you, like,
Yeah.
tell me more about that, or why did you decide to, I guess, quit out of that?
So I would say that it was more, do you know what? It's really interesting because I think it's really easy to, in your mind and in your mindset, it's very easy to turn around and be like, that's not for me. And now looking back at like where my mindset is now, it was probably more me looking at it and thinking that's a lot of effort and you have to be on it a lot. But also I think if you make something look hard in your mind, then it's going to feel hard. Like anything.
100%.
We know this, right? So I think it was a combination of that and me seeing enough evidence a lot of times that you can go to 100 auditions and not even get picked for one thing.
Yeah.
And for me, with my brain and like how entrepreneurial I am with my mind, I was like, surely there's got to be another way for this. And I didn't want to be that person to sit there and sort of think, I'm waiting for my lucky break. I'm waiting for my lucky break. I may as well make other stuff happen in the meantime. And then I guess,
just a quick announcement before we return to the podcast. If you're enjoying this episode of Midweek Motivation, you may be interested in checking out the Midweek Motivation newsletter, where every week I'll share with you a useful lesson on resilience, mindset, or fitness, or health in general, straight to your inbox. You also receive a free workout of the week, useful resources, and the latest videos that I've got up there. And just if you want to keep updated on my life, you'll find everything there. If you're interested in that, go ahead and hit the link in the description below, or go to Substack and search up Midweek Motivation. All right, let's return to the podcast.
How did you deal with rejection then, after all the times you went to West End and not getting like casted?
This is really interesting because I think rejection for me shows up in lots of different ways because of ADHD. So obviously that's something we'll get into in like another topic, but obviously part of having ADHD means that you have you're more susceptible to something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which means that you feel rejection so intense that it can often feel like a physical pain. And a lot of people feel it, but for somebody with ADHD, our emotional like barrier to how we feel those emotions, how intense they are, for us is there's kind of like no barrier or no filter. So that probably had a lot to play into the rejection side of things. And yeah, like I guess, was I more resilient back then or was I not? I can never recall, but I do think that I used to struggle with the rejection to the point where obviously it made me not want to pursue it anymore, as opposed to just pushing through and looking at it abundantly and thinking, well, that's not an opportunity, but I will go and find it somewhere else. So I think eventually the rejection just sort of like enabled me to think, oh, maybe I'm not meant to do this.
Yeah.
But there was probably periods of time throughout that whole performing. Yeah, like I remember going to so many auditions, queuing up for hours outside, never getting a lucky break. Like I would go from Wales to London, get the red eye, which is like the bus, which is 5 a.m. in the morning, you know, get that bus, come to London. I'd be like, yeah, this is me, this is my lucky break. And yeah, I never got the gigs and it's tough and like we don't hear anything back. But then that really does filter into just running a business in general as well.
Yeah, wow. I don't know if it's something that a lot of people can relate to, just making that commitment to get on transport at 5, going on queuing the whole day. That's, yeah. And not hear anything back. Like, I guess most people, it'll be they're applying for a job interview, and the worst outcome is like, not necessarily know they didn't get it, but they just don't hear anything back.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And I think when you put it like that, you realise like really how much determination it takes. And I think a lot of people probably wouldn't have done that, but for some reason my brain, it just never seemed like a barrier to me. Of course I was going to get up at 5 a.m. to go do that, you know? But yeah.
Imagine it's made you more resilient or stronger to be able to deal with rejection, you know, even with having, I guess, more sensitivity to rejection.
Yeah, and I think that as I've gone on my journey, and especially running an online business, that's where I really had to harden to it, because you could go on sales calls, you can speak to people, and you know, I've had people be on that call with me, they're about to pay for my services, and they hang up on the Zoom call, and I'm calling them and they don't answer. You know, like I've had some pretty intense situations happen So I would say that really did then enhance the resilience even more so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it has kind of like shaped me, but I also think that rejection sensitivity and just rejection in general is how you reframe your mindset about it as well. Because I think when you get, because I still get it now a little bit, but I think when you get to the point where you're like, that's not a reflection of me, that really helps. And you have to train yourself to be like, nothing is happening to me, it's happening outside of me. And that really helps to kind of like not take it personally. Because often it's not actually the rejection that you are, it's not because you didn't get the opportunity that you're upset about. It's more because you've taken it as a personal attack on you.
Yeah. I think that's great advice for anyone.
Thank you.
Um,
Someone for the clips.
yeah, exactly. So going back even further now, so you were diagnosed quite young with ADHD.
I was, yes.
Is that normal? Like to be, I guess, to know from such an early age?
Good question. I don't actually know, because I think that, you know, it's obviously so common for people to get diagnosed later on in life now. I'm sure there is a pool of people that were diagnosed when I was diagnosed,
Yeah.
but I think that I definitely felt like I was on my own. I think my mum was in the medical profession, or is still. So I think I always grew up in an environment where I had a diagnosis for everything, and I was kind of put under a microscope a little bit, and it kind of turned me into have a bit of health anxiety as I got older. But I would say that, yeah, like getting diagnosed at the age of 11, I felt like I was on my own.
Yep.
When that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when did you kind of realize that rather than having ADHD is like more of a, I guess, holding you back in life, but then reframing that to be like, okay, I can use this to my advantage? Is there a point in time where you that made that switch, or was it just something else that you did on your self development journey? What was that like, that journey through?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, because I got diagnosed with ADD when I was 11, and that's not even a diagnosis, like it's not a separate condition anymore. It's a part of ADHD.
Okay.
So ADD is like attention deficit disorder, but the deficit and the hyperactivity are both part of it. And you can now either have like ADHD, or, well, I wouldn't even say it's ADD or ADHD. That is like an umbrella, and then you can either have inattentive, hyperactivity, or combined.
And this is all under a bigger umbrella of neurodiversity?
And this is under a, yes, exactly. So I spent my whole entire life being like, I've got ADD or I've got ADHD, and it literally wasn't even until I was probably like 28 that I started, and it was my partner at the time. He was an online coach. He was in the development space, a bit like us. And I would just joke with him every so often and be like, I've got ADHD. And then I can't remember what the turning point was, but we started to like look into how that was actually affecting my life. And I honestly cannot tell you like the pivotal point, but I remember I started to look into how I could support myself with that and advocate for my needs a lot more, because I think I was just over the fact that I wasn't able to concentrate.
Yep.
And also really highlighted to me that if I wanted to make a go of the online space, I needed to train myself to be more attentive and more focused. So that kind of like sparked me to look into it a lot more. And then I think that was going back in 2022, so it wasn't even that long ago. And then I was posting the occasional bits and bobs on social media around ADHD, but I felt really uncomfortable about it. I felt like it was like a taboo subject.
Yep.
And yeah, I was quite embarrassed about having it. And also, it just felt like it wasn't something I was like shouting from the rooftops about, because I felt like it showed to other people that I was like incapable. And then...
And vulnerable.
And vulnerable. So vulnerable, Cam, exactly. And I think when I was... 2022, and then when I started to build my online business, I went to a mentor that I was working with, and I said to them, guys, I've got ADHD, just to let you know, I need a bit of extra support. So I would say at that stage, I was in the stage that a lot of people are at on their journey with ADHD, where they almost feel like they have to over advocate for their needs a little bit, and they're like, I don't want to sound really horrible, but I was almost acting like a little bit of a victim of my condition.
Yep.
Not to the point where I was giving excuses for it, but I almost looked at myself as this kind of weak character that needed all this support because I had this condition, and I felt, and I also used to give myself the identity of, oh, I'm a bit of a mess, I'm a bit of this, I can't do this, it was a different outlook on the whole thing. And then I spoke to the mentorship about it, and at the time I was looking to find the niche that I wanted to niche down with my online coaching, and they said, well, why don't you coach women with ADHD? And I said, well, hold up a minute here, like I don't even know how to look after myself, let alone other people. But even though that was an interesting journey at the time, it kind of then enabled me to go on my self-development journey, which then enabled me to reframe my mindset around it. And the more I learned about it, because that was another thing, there was a grieving period for me, I'd say, as well, where, because at the time, even when I was, 28, I thought that ADHD was literally just me struggling to concentrate and just being a bit scatty.
Yep.
And then I was reflecting on, as I was learning more, oh, maybe that's why I couldn't not hold down a relationship. I don't believe that it was just on me, but that's why I maybe had those issues. That's why I did this. That's why, oh my God. And it was almost like this light bulb moment. So even though I had that diagnosis and that identity when I was younger, it was almost like I was mourning that as I got older as well.
Yeah. So we all experience, loss of concentration or focus, maybe a bit of anxiety, maybe a bit of brain fog. How does that differ, from someone who doesn't have or hasn't been diagnosed with ADHD with someone who does? Like, what is maybe some, to help the audience get understanding of more what it's like to have ADHD? What are some sort of differences between what, say, a normal human would experience versus someone?
Yeah. So the difference between like a neurotypical person and a neurodiverse person. Really good question, because this is where it is such a controversial topic, because a lot of things that neurotypical people struggle with, neurodiverse people struggle with as well. You will experience, or other people will experience, rejection. You will experience brain fog. We live in a society that's so overstimulated and everything has to be done so quickly.
And the fact that I think our attention span is just getting so much worse, with having content that's literally being drip feed into us all the time. It's making us on these big companies that use the apps, we get so distracted. Like, how do we know if what someone's just now has poor distraction? What would you say? Is very distracted versus someone who is, I say, neurodiverse.
Yeah, and it is a very blurred line of, because like you said, and this is where the topic everybody has a bit of ADHD comes up, and that really pisses me off, so we'll have a chat about
I had a point on that.
Yeah, I can't deal with that comment. But to answer your question, so how I would describe it is that neurotypical people will be able to understand their limits. They will know when they are pushing too hard with work, or they are pushing too hard with certain things, and they will be able to maybe be more aware of that. Doesn't say that they're not necessarily immune to burnout and immune to all these things, but they may be able to have more awareness around it. They may be able to do things in a more logical order. They may be able to get out the house in a more strategic way. All of those things are things that neurotypical people would find a lot more straightforward, whereas somebody with ADHD or autism or any of the neurodiverse spectrum, so because there's a really big thing with neurodiversity where there's a common thing called cognitive dissonance, where if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So if it's not right in front of you on a big sticky note that you stuck on your forehead, it will literally not be happening.
Yep.
And that happens with us, with our awareness around our capacity. So, like for me, I will work until I'm debilitated.
Yep.
And that's not because I have an awareness around it. It's like I'm almost blind to it.
Yep.
I don't listen to the signals that my body has to tell me that I need to slow down.
Okay.
whereas somebody who's neurotypical may have those signals more. So that would be the differentiation between me of trying to express how somebody is neurotypical or neurodiverse to some degree. And there's lots of different examples of that I could put out there. But I would say on like a physical pain level and a physical level, somebody with ADHD is going to experience a lot more physical symptoms than somebody who's neurotypical because of our ability to be able to put our energy outwards a lot more in a higher capacity, but we have no cap on that.
I got it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good clarification
Thank you.
for a lot of people. Because for me, and if we can get on to that topic, like I'm getting content pushed towards me now, making sort of jokes about being distracted or having ADHD, and then I think to myself like, okay, I'm maybe overbooking myself sometimes. I'm doing my interests spread so wide. I'm trying to put myself in too many buckets, and then I will maybe experience more burnout. Not necessarily burnout, but just like being quite I guess very fatigued by the end of the day, and like it makes me think like, oh, maybe do I have ADHD? Like, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm sure I'm not the only one experiencing this.
Yeah,
but
everybody on the planet. No, but so true.
Yeah, I guess having more awareness now, and I mean, this is I guess the good thing about social media and people talking about it is that we are more educated on what it is. But does that make it or do we seem to think that is more common in maybe what we thought? I guess, or people maybe self-diagnosing or saying I have ADHD.
Well, this is it, and this is the topic, I guess, of conversation around everybody has a bit of ADHD because, you know, it is very easy to self-diagnose and think, oh, do I, don't I? But I think that if I can really hammer down on the awareness around the certain things that may differentiate from that, you know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna put out a really rogue example, right? A really rogue example. Potentially somebody that's neurotypical may go into a shop and be like, I look at this item and it would be so wrong of me to walk out of the door with that item without paying for it.
Yeah.
Because I know the consequences. Somebody with ADHD may walk into that shop, take the item, walk out of the shop because they want that dopamine hit, because obviously ADHD is a dopamine driven condition because we have a lack of dopamine.
Okay.
So that's more of like neuroscience stuff, not my forte with how to articulate that. But because of that, like that would be the difference, you know, we wouldn't have that immediate switch to be like, that's wrong necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, because this is also, I don't know, this could be completely coincidental, or just there's, I don't know, maybe there is some correlation, but a lot of the fitness coaches I worked with also have ADHD, and it's like, okay, if I'm going in this space, does that mean I have it? So
I don't want to give you a complex after but yeah.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I'm learning a lot here. Yeah. I've also been told, and I had this guest on the podcast, and he was diagnosed with ADHD much later in life, and he doesn't he views it in a very positive way. He doesn't I guess debilitate him for his line of work. In fact, he even said like it was more of a superpower for him. That's how he kind of reframes it. What are your thoughts on that?
I hate that comment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, no shade to the guest that was on, and I love the fact that he reframes it. But again, like I feel like saying the terminology superpower enables you to sit there and think, or the person to be like, yes, I'm so blessed that I have this condition. And yes, we have to look at things as obviously, I mean, I'm quite a religious and spiritual person, so I'd be like, God obviously gave this to me for a reason. I was put on this planet with ADHD for a reason, but also I think thinking of it as a superpower, if it was a superpower, then you wouldn't have any of the bad that comes with it. Well, not necessarily, because superheroes have bad as well, but I think that if you are going to say it's a superpower, then you need to highlight that, hey guys, I think it's a superpower, but I do understand that it still does affect me negatively sometimes as well, or not negatively. I do have struggles with it, but I really love what your other guest did with how he reframed it, and like he does look at it as a positive, because there are so many advantages to having it, and that's why with my clients and like how I market myself online, I say competitive advantage as opposed to superpower.
Yeah.
Because I think that comment, this is just a very fine line with that comment for sure.
Sure. Does health and fitness help you manage ADHD?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Yes, definitely. I think that even though I've never been outwardly hyperactive in the sense of when I was younger in the classroom, I was never the destructive kid.
Yeah.
My body's natural expression of my hyperactive tendencies have always been to want to exercise. I've always just been a naturally very active person because I think, I do think that you either are one or the other. Some people genuinely are like, I do not like exercise. I do it because I have to.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, because I know you can relate to this, it's like in your blood.
Yeah.
It's like, is it like in your genetics?
You have 2 days off and you're like, I feel like crap.
Yes, exactly. And whether that's for me, because I've had to learn to like reframe in terms of I feel like crap after 2 days off exercising, but I don't need to go and kill myself as a result of it. I can just go out for a walk or a bike ride and that is okay.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I would say that it's definitely helped me to channel my internal restlessness and get it out externally. But I did go on a bit of a journey with my fitness as well, because I was obviously in a lot of environments that enabled me to do things in extremes. And I think a lot of athletes and performers could probably relate to this, that then if you do have more of an inclination to have a more all or nothing mindset, which can happen with ADHD, being in certain environments that really bring that out can often not be the healthiest of environments to be in.
Because it becomes their identity in a way. And if they don't, like if they don't make it in a certain way, or if they fail or they're not performing very well, then if it's part of their identity, then this is where other issues start to arise, I think. And even when athletes say retire, or performers, like who do they become then?
Exactly. So here you've got that like self-worth and identity type like wrapped up in that. And then also alongside that, then the kind of obsessive side to how you can be with neurodiversity, like you hyperfixate on things, like, and then so you've got the combination, and then if you've got low self-worth, which also happens a lot with neurodiverse people, you're almost then using exercise as almost like a punishment to some degree, and you're not accepting, like I went through a huge journey of not accepting a workout unless I was literally like feeling sick.
Okay.
And I know that was also a disordered view of training and exercise. And I also had to work through that too.
Yeah. So you started in dancing, then went to CrossFit and like kind of F45, and with the CrossFit you got introduced to weightlifting as well.
Yes.
What other areas have you kind of dabbled into, or was that kind of the main part?
Yeah, so I'd say it's always, because obviously, the dancing and the CrossFit dancing came first and the CrossFit was when I was 16. Then I kind of fell out of love with, not out of love, fell out of touch with it.
Yep.
Obviously moved to London, and then I got back into more of the functional fitness stuff. So like you said, the F45s. And then I sort of went back into like the functional CrossFit scene, then more so in the Olympic lifting, and all of that stuff. When I was younger, I also did competitive athletics. So I did sprints, cross country as well. What else did I dabble in? I've obviously done skiing since I was little as well.
Well, that's so good. It's giving you such a good foundation to set you up for even now. Like, even though you're not doing those niches or even still sprinting to some degree, but you've kept this athleticism up. And you were telling me recently you were training for high rocks.
Yes.
You got a bit injured in the process though, but at least it's giving you like still that version of yourself where you can, put yourself into a good workout, feel good. You got the athleticism, you got the power, strength. You don't have to worry necessarily about aesthetics.
So true, Cam, so true. And I think that you and I can probably relate to that, which is why I think you have to deal with that with like other people's judgments as well, because people will look at us and like how we look aesthetically and think, like, obviously we've worked hard for it, but also we started that baseline from a very young age. And also just like how you move your body as well. Like I've noticed when we're coaching at F45 and at other environments, some people just naturally don't they look like they move in a way that they've always moved in that way.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, like, from the dancing, from the gymnastics, from everything, and that actually really worked in my favor with CrossFit.
Yeah.
And how when I was then training properly, I was really into my CrossFit journey, probably like 2022, 2023, and I was competing, I was getting really strong, and I had like quite an advantage over a lot of people because I was able to do the gymnastics really well. I was able to lift really well. I was able to do like an all round of things.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of was in my way with that more so was the fact that I've got an autoimmune condition. So that's always been my barrier to be able to get to that next level on my fitness journey.
Yep. Is that something that you're still kind of working through now?
Yeah, big time, because we don't really have, because I have a condition called endometriosis, and also another condition called PCOS, but they're both very connected in terms of like female hormones.
Yep.
So that's happening, and then I've also got another condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
I haven't heard that one.
Which is something, yeah, it's a very unique like name, I guess, but it's very common with people with ADHD. I don't quite understand the link yet.
Okay.
I'm doing a lot more research around it. But basically, it's where you have extreme hypermobility in your joints.
Really?
And then your connective tissue around your joints, I don't quite understand it, but it doesn't form in the way that it should. So it creates antibodies to kind of flare up and attack your body, which is what an autoimmune condition, I guess, is. So again, going back to the whole baseline fitness thing, oh my gosh, you're so flexible. Oh my gosh, you're this.
Which helps the weightlifting.
It helps a lot, and which is why Ollie lifting, I'm very naturally, like obviously I'm not as good as you, but I naturally look like I can do these things. But also you have to put a cap on how bendy you are, because it's actually not a good thing to some degree.
Yeah, you have to build strength in those end ranges for longevity.
So I have to be very careful, which is why I'm at the point I am now in my fitness journey, where my health comes first before anything.
Yep.
And I'm just figuring it all out, but I've really scaled back my training at the moment, not because I don't have the mental capacity to want to do higher ups, to do all these things, but it's more my body will flare up and I'll have all these inflammatory issues.
Yep.
So is it worth it at this moment in time?
Yep.
But I still train like 5 times a week, 6 times a week.
Yeah, which is still more than the average person.
Yeah, but it's just the output in those sessions, apart from my dance class on a Wednesday, which my body seems to still really like.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt my body in the way that other movements do. But when I know that I eventually want to return back to CrossFit and Ollie lifting, I'll definitely have to be... It's interesting though, because like Olympic lifting on its own as a separate, like just focusing on that one thing alone would be fine. Focusing on ergs alone would be fine. It's when there's lots of things in one, like barbell cycling for me is definitely, if you're in a workout and you're doing like a run and then a barbell cycling, that's when my body will be like, you need to be in bed after that.
Yeah.
And I'll be physically in pain.
Yeah.
So it's just testing out like what your body can do and what it can't at this moment in time, really.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So you started your online business
Yeah.
during COVID. This was more PT at this point, before your ADHD empire.
Yes. Go on.
Yeah, no. I think that was pretty much it. I guess so you started that. What were some of the kind of challenges as a business perspective that you struggled? You mentioned closing some of those sales, and then that transition. Do you still do online coaching now for fitness, or is it just working with businesswomen?
Businesswomen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, no. So, okay. So to give you a bit of a breakdown, like over lockdown, I wouldn't even say that my business was online in terms of. I did have a few clients on Zoom, and I was teaching classes on Zoom, but I wasn't doing any online programming or anything.
Yeah.
And it was all content for like, obviously, because at the time as well, throughout lockdown, I did play around with just trying to become a fashion influencer.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of different changes and transitions for sure.
But that's good. I think we need that. We need to explore those different avenues to see firstly what we're passionate about, what we're also like naturally good at, and what we feel like we can get the most fulfillment out for serving people. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think, that's what part of what we do is, basically like throwing shit at the wall until it sticks.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
Like you just got to put it out there. So the online coaching was quite funny because when obviously I came back to London after lockdown, I was still doing the in-person stuff, and then I think I returned. Did I return back to F45 for a little bit? I can't remember, but I was still doing all of that, and then I got approached by a company called Linus, and they are an online coaching company that basically scout influencers and other fitness professionals online, and you join their company and they help you scale your online business. So I joined them. At the time, they take quite a big percentage of your earnings, like 30%.
Yep.
It's quite a big chunk. And I was still very much like, I don't want to do the online coaching. I don't want to do it. Like, I don't enjoy writing plans online. Like, I just wasn't into it. And then my ex-partner, Jack, he was really into the online coaching space, like, really into it. And he's a very successful online coach. And he heavily influenced me to get back into it. And even though that's another conversation for another day with our dynamic towards the end, it kind of broke our relationship, us both doing the same thing, to be honest.
Yep.
But at the same time, I am actually quite grateful because he told me, or he influenced me to or supported me to leave Linus and say, you can do this on your own. I will help you build it up. And to be fair, like in 2022, I did take the leap to do it. And I went from, I don't know, like 2 online clients maybe, to about 10 in 2 or 3 months. So
nice.
I was doing really well. And at that point, it was very much a focus on women, CrossFit, lifting, getting stronger. There was no ADHD in the mix at all.
Yep.
But the way that I was getting those clients was very masculine, because I was very influenced with how my partner at the time, he was taught to do it, which was go out, message loads of people on Instagram, cold DMing, getting like, and obviously as a woman, now knowing what I know about business and how I operate, my nervous system was not going to be able to uphold that.
Yep.
It would be like working in recruitment, right? Like for me, and obviously with ADHD, that just didn't feel aligned with me, even though I do feel like you need to have a little bit of that. But then I decided then to go all in and join the mentorship that I was on. Found the niche of ADHD, and that was very much then focused on ADHD and fitness coaching for women with ADHD.
Yeah.
At the time, obviously, I did get in the market very early on. Nobody really knew about ADHD. And I went from, in the space of probably like 3 months, I went from like 10 online clients to 35 online clients.
Well done.
Yeah, like it was insane, but also it wasn't the way that I should have been working. It wasn't sustainable for me.
You don't have the system in place for that scale.
I didn't have the systems in place. I didn't have the ability myself. I didn't have the confidence within myself to deal with the ebbs and flows.
Yep.
Everything was a personal attack on me. I was taking everything personally. I just couldn't handle it, Cam. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be, I'm going to be brutally honest, you have to be fucking hardcore to run a business. Like, there is no fucking around. And I was not at that stage in myself to be able to deal with that. And then it took me having like a really big personal life thing happen with my mum, where she got really sick. But then it was like, if I wasn't there doing it, who was going to do it for me? I needed to take personal time to recover because I was dealing with grieving and all of that. I didn't have the time to. I couldn't do it. So then naturally, I couldn't uphold that level. I couldn't go out on Instagram and find more clients doing the whole thing that I did.
Yep.
So things were reducing. I was losing people. And it was just kind of like a downward spiral. But I also believe that if I was doing it in the way that I was meant to, it wouldn't have happened that way either. But then I started to realise along that journey that I actually didn't enjoy coaching women online for fitness. And more so coaching women online with ADHD for fitness, because these women didn't need a fitness plan. They needed mindset coaching. Okay. They needed to rewire how they looked at their fitness journey.
Yep.
And they also needed to get out of the mindset that they couldn't do something because of their ADHD. Because I was attracting those kind of women into my circle.
Yep.
which was also really challenging because you think about the mental load, because nobody ever talks about this with online coaching as well, right? You basically end up being a therapist to these people.
Yeah.
So you're doing more than a therapist would do. Give them a fitness plan, you're checking in with them, you're holding them accountable on WhatsApp, sorry. You know, you're doing all of these things, and you're literally just like selling your soul to this thing. Because I didn't have very good boundary setting either, so all of this stuff happened.
Plus creating content on the sides.
Oh, yeah, we haven't even chatted about that. Like, that's a whole other situation. Like, that's like a separate job for me. Like, yeah.
It is. It's a full-time job for everyone.
Like, yeah, and I still work with brands and do collaborations and stuff now.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah.
and then they send you a deliverables, and then you send it back, and they're like, oh, we don't like this, can you change it? And like, phew. So that's all happening. So yeah, it's a lot. And then what happened was I realised very quickly on that if I wanted to make a go of it with online coaching, I needed to shift who I worked with and also find women that could afford it.
Yep.
Because otherwise, with online coaching, you also find that nobody teaches you this. You know, you want to tap into a market with people that aren't going to have payments bounce back and all of that kind of stuff. So I was learning all of this, but I feel like with my business and how it transitioned to the women in business, that was because I could never relate to the women on their ADHD fitness journey because I've never had an issue going out getting 10k steps. I've never had an issue training.
Got it. Yeah.
So I was like, how am I meant to relate? I was getting angry. I was like, I can't empathize with you. I'm sorry, Karen. I can't. Like, you know, just go out and get your shit done. Like, yes, it's hard sometimes, but chuck a jacket on. It's raining. Cool. Yeah. So I really struggled to work with that clientele. But what I could relate to is that I never wanted any woman with ADHD to have to go through what I did with running a business. Because like, I know that a lot of women probably went down the online coaching route, and especially like me, think, oh, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for me because if I can't handle it like this, then I can't handle it. But actually, no, you're just getting sucked into a model of online coaching that is like a rinse and repeat that all online coaches use, and you're never taught that there's a different way to do it. Whereas I believed that there was a different way to do it, and there is, because it's about making it work for you. But you can't rush that journey either, because your business is a reflection of your healing journey. So I went on this huge spiritually healing journey in 2023, 2024, which led me to where I am today with my business.
Yeah. and that's all right. What is it? So I guess Amie Barlow now.
Hello.
Yeah. So what is I guess your life look like these days? And you know, you've had your ADHD empire now for how long?
So ADHD empire kind of came about last summer, so it's very, very new.
Yeah.
But yeah. So very new, and then life now kind of is balancing, because I had a really tough personal year in 2024. I moved out of London with my ex-partner, moved to a new town, completely left my life. We broke up, so I broke up with him after, 3 years together. So I was in between all of that. I was dealing with personal stuff with family, health issues, I had surgery, so much going on. So I was really struggling to keep up with my business. So I was in survival mode. I was just getting by. So now what life looks like is obviously building ADHD Empire up, which now is like an online coaching business for women who have ADHD, who want to develop their businesses in a way that feels like their soul calling, basically.
Yeah.
And how to do that in a way that supports their ADHD. But again, this is still in the evolving stages, because I know that I'm also very passionate about helping people build a really strong personal brand and online presence, and how to emotionally connect to their audience. So I'm still figuring out how that fits into it. But then I also still offer like just life coaching for people as well.
Yeah. So
that's ADHD Empire. And then alongside that, I still do obviously the fitness coaching for F45, have my own personal clients. What else do I do? I still teach online Pilates classes as well. But that is literally to give me a bit of a mental break from my business, but also because I lost quite a lot of capital last year. So I have to realistically build myself back up again.
Yeah.
Whilst I'm in the initial stages of this ADHD empire. And then the online content side of things, there is an advantage there that we do have 38k followers on Instagram. So brands do still want to work with me, which is nice.
Yeah.
but that's not like they're very like sporadic. But if I do a collaboration, then that will be. But I still keep up with regular content because my social strategy drives my marketing for my coaching.
Yeah.
So without that, I don't get any leads.
Well, if anything, that personal brand is probably more important than ever.
Oh my God, so important. And I love it as well. I love the community that I've built online. I love expressing myself through my platform. It's very cathartic for me as well to do that.
Yeah, fantastic. Well,
Thank you so much for listening to the Midweek Motivation Podcast. I had an incredible chat with Amie, and she's a very wonderful speaker. If you want to see more of her content, go ahead and check out her socials linked in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give this a rating on Spotify or YouTube or wherever that you're listening from, and go ahead and leave a comment on the type of topics or guests that you want to hear from, and I'll do my best to bring them on. Go ahead and check out 0 to 1 and use the code CAM10 on your first purchase, and that way you can join a community of people who are very ambitious, who have big goals, and they just need some inspiration or a community to help them get started on whatever the venture that they have. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.